Hello and welcome back to René Me, where it's time for Chapter 14.
René Me by George East. Read by Eugene Fraser.
September the 17th. I am particularly pleased with myself today. I dropped into the Photoquick shop in Saint-Sauveur this morning to pick up a roll of film, and the manager told me Helen Patton has engaged his services. He's to fly over the Grand House at Neuilly and take some aerial shots now that the restoration is complete. As he'll be going past Le Pouce, I asked if he'll take some photographs of our terrain while he's up there. We negotiated for a few moments, and a satisfactory deal was reached with regard to extra fuel, time in the air, photographic plates, and additional artistic output. I handed over 300 francs and left, feeling I had pulled off a major coup. It will be nice to have some panoramic pictures to show the extent of our estate. As we struck the deal, I considered asking the photographer if he has any specialist infrared equipment which could detect and show buried metal. But don't want the word about the miller's gold to get out. He is a notorious gossip. I still think an English friend's wheeze for staging metal detector weekends for enthusiast clubs from England is a sound idea. We could bury little trophies around the terrain and follow the contestants round to see if they stumble on the treasure. I shall phone my friend in the morning and ask how he feels about a joint venture, with him having the accommodation rights for his Chateau B&B, and me the entry fee and refreshments proceeds. September the 19th. René called at the mill to say we have a problem. A plane has been circling the water meadow this morning at a very low altitude. He recognizes it as the one the photographer at Saint-Sauveur hires for work, and is concerned that he's been paid by the government to take some spy pictures and catch René working while he's supposed to be unemployed. He makes me promise not to tell the Social Security that I am paying him if a snooper arrives. I tell him not to worry, that I have commissioned the shots of Le Pouce. He is dumbstruck at the thought of my spending money on photographs of grass, and says he could have taken some from the top of the giant cedar tree in the orchard, which would have been just as good for half the price. October the 5th. The Bar Ghislaine is quiet, and Mr. Morris is sitting in his usual spot, as usual, alone, and looking ruminatively at a large glass of Suze. I often speculate as to why, with far greater stock and range of alcoholic beverages in his wardrobe, he chooses to pay to spend his afternoons in the bar. My wife thinks it's because he's lonely, and given his continual experimentation with ever more exotic flavours of Calva, just hasn't got room at home for the amount of medicinal Suze he needs to get through each day. Morris seems more subdued than normal, and when I join him at his table, he says little in response to my polite inquiries as to his health and wardrobe. When I ask after Alain, he takes a drink, fiddles with his tights, and explains that Alain is dead. He was involved in a crash in the Briquebec to Valognes route last week. The funeral is tomorrow, and of course I and my wife are welcome to attend. He has not seen René since before the accident, and would be grateful if I could pass on the details of the interment if I see him. I offer our condolences, but say, if he will excuse us, we will not attend the service. As I leave after a suitable period of keeping him silent company, Mr. Morris says that he is sorry I didn't get to know his nephew better, as he was a good boy. It seems unfair that someone so young should be taken when he is still here at his great age. It is not natural. Our arrangements with regard to the picking rights in the mushroom wood are now, of course, void. I return home and tell my wife the news. She will write a letter to Mr. Morris, but is relieved that I have not committed us to attend the ceremony. We've both had our fill of funerals at the little church at Neuilly. Later, I call at the mobile home to tell René about the accident and funeral. He and Eric are both drunk and seem disinterested. René says he will not be going to the ceremony as he's too busy, and asks abruptly for money to buy materials for digging yet another goldfish pond in the water meadow. I respond in an equally blunt manner that I cannot see why he needs money at this stage, as all it will take to start is a couple of spades and some hard work. I will pay when the job is done, as usual. Perhaps if they drank less and ate more, they would be in better condition to take on the work. Eric looks as if he is considering taking offence at my advice, but obviously thinks better of it. I leave them sitting sullenly amongst the squalor and go back to the mill. I don't like the look of René lately, and he seems resentful of me. I don't know if Eric is a bad influence on him, or the other way round. Either way, they are not good for each other, or me. October the 15th. A dramatic and distressing confrontation has taken place at the bar Ghislaine. We were to have dinner with the Odois, and had met with our host so that he could show us the way to his isolated home in the Val de Neu. As we talked, René staggered in to join us at our table without an invitation, which I could see annoyed Hubert. Seemingly pleased with himself, our estate manager called loudly for a round and ostentatiously pulled out a thick wad of notes to pay, both of which actions are most unusual. We tried to make polite conversation for a while, but René was obviously in a cocky mood, and several times looked blearily at my wife, laughed at some private joke, and grunted something in rapid patois, which was obviously coarse and caused Hubert discomfort. As we stood to leave for the dinner party, Hubert asked if we're happy with the horses grazing in our top field, and I said that they're doing a good job in keeping the grass down, and that we're pleased that René managed to find them. Hubert appeared puzzled, and said that it was he that arranged with a friend for them to be put there. Looking at René, he loudly asked if we are satisfied with the rental agreement of 1,000 francs for the year, which is a fair price, especially when paid in advance. There was a long silence, and Madame Ghislaine and the other customers began to pay keen attention as René tried to brazen the situation out, before lurching to his feet, pulling a handful of notes from his wallet and throwing them on the table. I asked him why he had not passed the money on to us before, and he at first protested his innocence, saying that he had not seen us for more than a week. But Hubert quietly said he knew the money was paid over even before the horses arrived more than a month ago. Normally I would have covered the situation by taking the money and making some excuse about René already having mentioned he had it, but was very angry. I reminded him loudly that it was my specific instruction not to let the fields out, as this was my small way of showing a lasting sign of respect for our mayor. I had allowed him to take advantage of me for a long time, but now he had insulted the memory of Jean Chevalier with his petty greed. His father would have been ashamed of him. Nobody spoke for what seemed a long time, and René looked at me as if I had struck him. He left his drink and the money on the table and pushed his way through the door. We listened to the furious buzz of his mobilette fading away in the distance before settling the bill and leaving. October the 16th. René has gone. All that remains to remind us of his tenancy in the top field is a cardboard box overflowing with empty bottles, 2 long gouges to show where the tow tractor arrived and left early this morning, and a broken gatepost. Obviously, the driver was not Roland the specialist. I am saddened more than I would have thought. In their different ways, René and the mayor have played a huge part in our lives for the past 3 years. We shall just have to make our own way in the future, now that both have left us. October the 27th. I narrowly avoided an encounter with a drunken hornet this morning. I don't know if it is the same one which buzzed me in the mill cottage this summer, but he seemed to cast a bleary and knowing eye in my direction while lurching out of the orchard. René told me last year that they like to feast on rotting apples at this time, and can become totally intoxicated after a long session. He sounded quite envious. As I took shelter behind the bike shed, the beast zigzagged unsteadily off in the direction of the water meadow. If he disturbs the Cray gang as they settle down for winter, there could be big trouble on the waterfront tonight. November the 4th. The Indian summer is over, and the land is closing down for the winter. The days are short. The legendary Cotentin wind is working itself up to a suitable fury for the long, dark months ahead. And someone has turned the heavenly shower mixer from warm to cold. Most of our bird and animal lodges have packed up and bedded down or gone to more hospitable quarters for the winter, though I can't imagine where they will find them. Nobody in the village has heard of or from René, but for us at least his memory lingers on. This morning I found the larger of the top fields being turned into a quagmire by a tractor in the control of a complete stranger. Quite politely in the circumstances, I asked him what he thought he was doing. He retorted that he knew exactly what he was doing, and if I didn't, he suggested I get a good pair of spectacles or a book about farming. My nose should also give me a clue as to the enterprise, which involved digging a great deal of mud into the ground to give it back some of the life which had obviously been drained from it for so long by an uncaring farmer. From then, the tone of our conversation went downhill, and we almost came to blows before he explained that he had a verbal contract to work not only this field but all the others, and if I had a problem, I should consult the owner, Mr. Ribet. After taking the golden opportunity to tell him that a verbal contract is not worth a paper it isn't written on, I explained the true situation vis-à-vis ownership and gave him his money back, plus healthy compensation for his wasted pig manure. In spite of the situation, I have to admit to a sneaking admiration for the fox's negotiating skills. I had to repay the farmer much more than I would have thought a fair rent for the fields would have fetched.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that chapter of René and Me, and that you join us again for the next one. See you soon.
René and Me. Written by George East and read by Eugene Fraser.